Hello, welcome to another episode of Namtaro Talks. Today's episode will be about examples and role models, or role models and examples. I think that title rings the bell a bit better. Yeah, to be honest, work has been a little slow, and the stock market was not very kind to me recently. So I was like, oh, okay, sure, let's just record another episode. Well, where do I even begin with this topic? I think this topic came to me because growing up, I came to realize I didn't really have examples or role models to fully follow. I mean, of course, I had some, and they were good, they were solid, and they were constructive and positive, but there wasn't really one who fully connected with me or related to me. The first two that would come to mind, or of course my grandpa and my dad, maternal grandpa anyways. Yeah, I talked about him in previous episodes, how he passed upon not only aspects of Vietnamese culture, but the importance of education. I mentioned the story about he sat my brother and I down and made us write Vietnamese paragraphs, but it's also the way he conducted himself, carried himself. Of course, he wasn't perfect. I knew he had a lot of his own internal struggles and conflicts. But just seeing an elderly figure, someone who led the way, someone who had principles, who lived a disciplined life, someone who you wanted to check up on, but also kept you accountable. At first, I was like, oh my God, why do I have to keep calling my grandparents? Like it was like a duty or a checklist. But after a while, you come to realize that they look forward to it and it's important because as long as they are open and understanding about it, they are a valuable resource. They had decades of life experiences and information that will not be available forever. And maybe an Asian filial piety thing, but in retrospect, I'm glad that I called and asked how they're doing and checked up on them. Whether it's for mainly the holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Father's Day and of course Mother's Day for my grandma. But is that interaction that they hold on to, that they value, because they're from a different world, different generation. So yeah, that's my grandpa. He was an example and role model. Of course, next would be my dad. I am not going to get too sappy or sentimental with it, nor too personal either, but he was a good dad. He is a good dad. Yes, as of this episode, my dad is still alive and well. As a matter of fact, he might be more physically active than I am. But yeah, my parents' dual income household, but of course my mom took care of, I guess, giving us rides to extracurriculars and were more involved with our education and Vietnamese culture and whatnot. And my dad was too, but he was like the workhorse who grinded, who was like our rock, our solid foundation. He was the one who held his own and held our own, like through all like drama, conflict, challenges. Without him, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have had what I had. Not just like a home, but the life that we had and the area we lived in and everything in the home. He was a provider, I'm sure he sacrificed a lot. I'm sure he had other interests and dreams that he kind of left on the back burner for us, our family. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, far from it. We had many memories. We had outings, we had vacations, we had trips, and all of those took planning, took logistics, and of course, a bit of expenses as understand. And he has his own charms and idiosyncrasies. But at the end of the day, he's there and he cares, and that's all you can really ask for. Yeah, interestingly enough, I find that I pick up a lot of similar traits as my dad, such as randomly waking up early. Before I didn't take many naps, now I take one every now and then. I guess like willing to move, willing to drive, willing to do stuff. Not to mention a bit exploratory. Yeah, he enjoys eating out, and I do too. And more could be said about both my grandpa and my dad, but that's not what the episode is about, or fully about anyways. And yes, you will notice a recurring theme. Yeah, most of the role models and examples I'm talking about will be male. Not that I'm sexist or anything. There were like female role models and examples also, but I'm a male. I resonate with males more. The word of a man or a male, it holds a different kind of weight. Or the example they set, or the life they build for themselves, or the way they conduct themselves and carry themselves around. And that's another thing I come to realize, is like you don't go ahead and declare yourself to be an example or role model. You just are, just your presence around, just your reputation, just your words and your action. It influences those who are less experienced, those who are younger than you, those who are more impressionable, those who have not been there yet. Among my mom's side cousins, I had one cousin who was a bit older than the rest of us, and he was the relative pioneer. I mean, I don't think I knew what he did in middle school, but he was the first to go to high school, first to go to college, first to get married, first to get a house, first to have kids. And I thought he was absolutely hilarious. He had a sense of humor. He had more street smart. He had jokes that just cracked us up. He was surprisingly very good at hide and seek, even though he was physically bigger than us. He would always be the last to be found. He taught us some card games and I guess got us into a little gambling aspect. I mean, and his presence is made at family gatherings. Like, you know he is there. One memory I had was he rented a convertible and then he took some of us to, I don't know, I'm very sure it has to have been abandoned or an old military base. They're pretty open, like roads and pavement, and he just drove us around on there. I don't remember if there were donuts. I think there were. I think he also let me drive it a little bit too, though I was much more careful and conservative. But yeah, that was my first time, I think, riding in a convertible and driving a convertible. Okay, maybe the memory might be a bit hazy and I might be wrong. Maybe I never drove it, but I know a convertible was involved. But yeah, my cousin and I, we share the same alma mater. Yeah, with him being the first to get married and get a home and all of that. I am able to ask him questions and bounce ideas off of him as appropriate. Not to mention he's much more financially savvy than I am. Yeah, so we talk about like stocks, investing, how the market's doing, though he'd probably be ashamed of how I'm doing in the market right now. But this cousin was quite older than me, though I forgot how much older. I'm guessing between 7 to 10 years. Yeah, to me that's considered like a wide enough age gap to have a role model. I had another cousin who's 2 years older than me, and we had many similarities. Of course, the same alma mater and same field, believe it or not. So when I was applying to school, he was the one who helped me with the applications and gave me advice. Yeah, this cousin, I mean, I consider him more of a friend than like an older example or role model because of the age difference. But there were many positive traits about him. Like he conducts himself with humility and hard work. Like he knows the grind, he knows the struggle. And of course, being in the same field as me, he is an advocate for health, which I really respect. Yeah, he advocates for healthy eating, being exercising and active, outdoors, though he is much more involved with the field and the community than I am. I admit that. Yeah, he reads like the journal articles and he volunteers and he's like some kind of, not really a board member, but he holds a position in one of the organizations of our field. I guess after a while, I mean, what really defines an example or a role model? I'll go on another tangent. There was an episode of Boy Meets World, yeah, where Eric, the older brother, goes into the classroom of Corey, the younger brother, and he gives like a little presentation or speech about the, I guess, upcoming things, the crazy things in high school. I forgot how it turned out, but after the speech, Mr. Feeney, well, yeah, Mr. Feeney, he's like their teacher, then their principal, then their professor. But in this role, he's their teacher. And Eric tells Mr. Feeney that he's like holding back and he doesn't disclose every crazy possible thing that could happen in high school and beyond. And that Eric, he himself is not perfect, that he doesn't consider himself a role model. Then Mr. Feeney said, when you stepped into our classroom, you became one automatically. I guess one more example I'll mention regarding a person I know in real life who who applies to this episode is my former employer. Yeah, I first met him at an alumni event for my graduate program. Honestly, I just met him when I was checking him in because I was I guess in charge of like the table that does that. But apparently he won an distinguished alumni award for the program. And when you win the award, you get your face featured on a cereal box, and that cereal box is displayed in the hall of the building at our graduate program. So I see that face every day when I was in that program. But after I graduated, I applied for a job, and I applied at his clinic. Yeah, I remember driving down there and then like sitting and having a conversation with him for about an hour about many things that we could relate to, and just getting a feel of how to know each other, get to know each other. And yeah, I was hired. I was very happy and grateful to be hired, to be part of not only his clinic, but the community that he serves. And he was a good boss, a good employer. He was honest, he worked hard, he kept it simple. He was very gregarious and affable, yet knowledgeable with the people that we served. He was always there to answer any questions I had. He knew the ins and out of the business. Yeah, he treated all the employees fairly, equally, with respect. And how can we forget the Christmas dinners as his home? Well, his wife is a good cook. His wife also worked at the clinic too, though not as much as he does. Though she works on more behind the scenes stuff. But oh yeah, those Christmas dinners were delicious, and we get to hang out in his was it the pool house, or I don't know, like the side house that he physically built himself, because I think he had an architect background, so that's why his backyard was pretty nice. Yeah, in one of my previous episodes, I mentioned that I like EDM and I DJ. So for the anniversary party of his clinic, he hosted it at his house, and he let me a DJ set. I mean, he could be considered a mentor or a role model, or example, but I see more of a mentor, because to me, an example or role model is maybe a bit more from a distance, though it doesn't always have to be, but someone that maybe a slightly level above you. That it's in the term role model, like you try to model your life and your behavior and your personality and your principles and your conduct after them. Not 100%, but you take all the positive aspects of it anyways, or you should anyways, because I'll talk about all the terrible role models out there later. Yeah, because at the current moment, I'll admit, I'm more grown, I don't really have examples or role models, but there's people I follow, I keep track of. They have a presence out there. I follow their career. They contribute something constructive and positive to the world. The first would be a Vietnamese, Vietnamese American author, Viet Nguyen. Of course, I first knew him through the Pulitzer Prize winning book, The Sympathizer. And when I read it, I thought it was awesome. It was such a unique story. And from it, of course, there's always the usual Vietnam War refugee story, but it had a bit of espionage and intrigue and interesting characters. And of course, with him being an English major, it wrote at a slightly higher level that challenged me a little bit, but also many relatable, obscure Vietnamese things, like certain songs or certain artists, certain singers, certain aspects of Vietnam, certain aspects in the history. I always recall the story that it was a Sunday morning, and I guess it was too hot that summer, and I inadvertently woke up at like 6:30 a.m. and I just picked up the book and kept reading. That's how good it was. That's how much I liked it. And of course, I read like the sequel, The Committed, and a couple of memoirs and autobiographies. One is called recently it's called To Save and to Destroy. Though that book was a bit over my head, and of course, A Man with No Faces. No, I mean, of Two Faces. No Faces is Game of Thrones, I think. A Man of Two Faces. Yeah, so he got much more deeper into his background and his upbringing and what his childhood was like and what his academic trajectory was like. I listened to interviews with him, the way he carries himself, the way he's unapologetic about his Vietnamese background. But he's like articulate and expressive and assertive also. I even had the pleasure of meeting him one time. It was at a book signing event, though the book was for a picture book that he and his child collaborated to create. So we got that picture book, and of course we got our copy of The Sympathizer, and he signed it. Well, being my brother and I. Yeah, and that was surreal. He signed it, we got a picture with him. The one more interesting thing was when I emailed him, I actually got a reply from him. I doubt it was his publicist or anything. Yeah, I asked a whole bunch of questions, and he says, I really appreciate your interest. Most of these questions can be answered through the interviews I've conducted, though that was the only reply I ever got. I tried emailing him a couple more times, but I'm sure he's pretty busy and has a bit more of a celebrity status by now. And of course, when The Sympathizer was made into a live-action TV show on HBO, I watched that too. Another person that I follow is Andrew Yang. Yeah, most people know him for being a 2020 presidential candidate. But I thought he was like charming and interesting and funny, but was relatively bold and had good ideas and came from a good place. I know some of his ideas, though it would be ideal, they were a bit out there and probably a bit hard to adapt or for everyone to accept, such as universal basic income, everyone getting $1,000 a month. But he also advocated for several other important reforms for government and the election process, with being ranked choice voting. And he called the rise of AI back then, before AI is the way it is now. He had a motto being Make America Think Harder, or math for short. And he had a hat that said the word math on it, and I got one of those hats. Yeah, my brother got me that for Christmas. And he started his own political party, being the Forward Party, with the motto being not left, not right, forward. But of course, Yeah, he ran as a Democrat, but the Democratic establishment tried to suppress him, tried to silence him, tried to make him out to be a fringe candidate that you don't take seriously. And I read several of his books, one being The War on Normal People, and the other just being Forward. I even had the blessing to meet him in real life one time. Of course, he showed up not really fashionably late, but I'm sure he was busy or his plane had to land. But we get to mingle with like-minded people. And when he showed up, like, people were excited. They want to take pictures with him, which I did, of course. Yeah, and I just said all the things that I kind of do, such as like listen to his interviews, read his books, and he was like, "Thank you, brother. Thank you for your support." Yeah, so of course Viet Thanh and Andrew Yang, they're both Asian, or Asian American to be more specific. Of course, Viet Thanh being an author, Andrew Yang not just being a political candidate, but a past lawyer. Well, even though it's for a few months and he hated it, then he became a tech entrepreneur and he sold his company, and he had that program, Teach for America. No, that wasn't it. It was another program. But he encouraged like thinking outside the box, thinking beyond what's right in front of you, think beyond what's possible. Like, don't be afraid of who you are, but be open to the rest of the world, to all the different ideas out there. And he became frustrated with how the government is run, how Congress is run, how inefficient it all is. I don't blame him. Yeah, he saw the political process with campaigning, with how like bills and laws are passed, and the partisan gridlock that we're in right now, and how inefficient and frustrating it is. But like I say, yeah, Andrew Yang and Viet Thanh, they are not really examples or role models. They could be, but they're more people I follow. Yeah, I guess we got the four categories so far. Examples and role models, or those could be similar. Okay, three categories. And mentors and people you follow. But the thing is, I follow them, but I don't like take everything they say like to heart, you know? I take it with a grain of salt. I take into account their backgrounds and maybe even their bias. I support both of them, but I am not dedicated to them, you know? I don't worship them. That's the thing. These figures, like your relationship with them, it could change over time. Like you come to see how human they are. Or that's how you should be anyways. Because if you put someone on a pedestal, you glorify them, you make them out to be some sort of deity that they could absolutely do no wrong. You hang on to every single word they say, everything that they do, even every tweet they make or social media post. At that point, it's beyond a role model or an example anymore. Because role models and examples, they should be there. But at the end of the day, you still have to think for yourself. And you don't take everything about them. You take the applicable aspects, the positive aspects. Then again, what I'm talking about, it's what you should do. But many people don't do that anyways. They just follow blindly and follow dogmatically. Like one example of figures that you should not follow as a role model or example. I mean, you can like keep an eye on them and keep track of them, but take them for who they are and keep them as a distance. Are celebrities, whether it be actors and actresses, singers, even internet personalities, athletes. Like, you respect their skill, you respect their position, but that's all it should be. Like, if they have good aspects about them, then you incorporate that. But like fanboiling or fangirling, that's just ridiculous, and you're just embarrassing yourself, if anything. That you make your entire personality about that person. Sometimes you even have a parasocial relationship with them. And I'll be honest, sometimes that person that you're really into, that you hold up on such a high pedestal, I'm very sure they don't know you. They don't care about you. They might even hate you. But most likely they probably took you for granted. But you are real. The people in your immediate circle, in your community, your family and friends, those are real. And maybe with a stroke of luck, you're able to meet one of those figures. It's fine. But at the end of the day, they're human too. They're people too. Yeah, Viet Thanh and Andrew Yang, they were down to earth. Well, based on my interactions with them anyway, they were chill. They were cool. I guess another thing about examples and role models is that if it doesn't directly apply to you, would you want your kids to follow them or be like them? Yeah, maybe someone has some advice, and maybe some of the things they make, it may make sense or resonate with you. But nobody's perfect. Some people may have a shady past or demons that they're fighting themselves or skeletons in their closet. Yeah, like right now in the news, you hear about the epidemic of male loneliness and the manosphere, because young males don't really have role models. So they gravitate towards these figures who at times may be bombastic or chauvinistic or even lying to them. or giving them a skewed perspective, or insulating them in their own bubble, possibly discouraging critical thinking. I'm just saying, these people, they're out there and they talk. They have a platform, but that's all it should be. They're not your friend. They don't know you. They don't know your daily life or what you go through. Maybe sometimes they show a behind the scenes video, but that is a video. It's likely scripted and edited. And sometimes you see these people embroiled with controversy. They say never meet your heroes. That's why you have to be your own hero. You don't play someone else as a hero. I can't imagine that everyone who thought Hulk Hogan or Bill Cosby was their hero are very disappointed right now. Yeah, throw in the author Neil Gaiman into the mix. Like for me, I'm like, okay, cool. He writes some pretty interesting stories. But what was recently, well, not recent, maybe a few years ago, uncovered about him, you realize that they're not perfect. They're not who you 100% think they were. Some might even go as far as cancel them and wish for their downfall. But I'm like, that's the person. I don't really know that person. I don't really care about that person. I care about the body of work. Maybe I'll consume it, but I won't support it. I won't spend more money on it, you know? Like I'll bootleg it or like borrow it for free at the library. And we cannot forget one figure that you cannot ignore right now that many people out there think is an example or a role model. Others might idolize him and deify him and think he can do absolutely no wrong. I don't even have to say his name. You already know who it is. I'll probably get arrested by ICE or held up at the border for this. But we're talking about the Cheeto, Tangerine Palpatine, Mr. Orangutan. Yeah, I said in the previous episode, that is not a man. That is not a role model. That is not an example. That is not who you should want your kids to follow or turn out like. But it's kind of frustrating because you can't make someone follow or not follow someone. They did it at their own volition. And I guess it goes to show that we have such a scarcity of role models and examples out there. But people also have poor judgment with who they see as role models and examples. Or they can't really distinguish between that and people. Like, I wouldn't say idolize or worship, but you put them on such a higher power level than you, that they could do anything, that they can do no wrong. Like, their word is law, their actions are for the history books. I don't know. I'm like, dude, if your life or your personality is about those figures, you deserve better. You deserve to have your own perspective, to broaden your own mind, to think for yourself, to have critical thinking, not make your personality like another personality out there. Yeah, it's no secret that I like the band Linkin Park, but if I've ever met them in real life, I'm not gonna be like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I would meet them graciously. I would shake their hand. I would say, I love your music. Thanks for everything you've done. I follow you most of your career. You've been a huge influence on my life. And with it being Linkin Park, they've received many messages and sentiments like that from many people over the years, I'm sure. I would say it to Mike. I would say it to Emily. I would have said it to Chester back then. Okay, gotta give the other members some love too. I would have said it to Colin, Brad, Phoenix, Dave. Oh, sure, even Alex, the touring guitarist. Oh, Mr. Han. How can I forget Joe or Mr. Han? But yeah, I love Linkin Park songs. I've been to Linkin Park concerts. I have Linkin Park merch. But I don't idolize or love or worship Linkin Park. They're just one thing I like. They're one aspect of my personality. They're something that I follow. Are they the absolutely best band in the world ever? No. But are they making a strong, solid case for themselves? Yes. But yeah, and they also resonate. They're relatable. They're creative. See, those are aspects that a person can take. Not just the entirety, not just the identity. Yeah, just because someone is good at something or in a good position doesn't guarantee that they're a good person. It would be ideal if they are. But we're talking about ideals here. Like, the world is not ideal. I wish it was, but then again, there wouldn't be many struggles and challenges. This might end up being a short episode also. But like I say, I said all I could possibly say for the topic for the time being. I'm not just gonna milk for time. Who knows, there might be addendums later. Oh wait, there is an addendum right now. I can't believe I totally neglected this point. People should strive to be role models, be good example. Am I one? Probably not, but I strive to be. I know who I'm influencing with the way I talk, the way I live my life, the way I carry and conduct myself, the way I communicate. I mean, fathers should be role models for their kids. Right now, I know I'm influencing my niece and nephews and my friends' kids. Am I perfect? Of course not. I have many bad habits and vices that they don't see or know about. But it's not like I'm putting up a front when I'm around them, you know? I'm just being myself. Yeah, not really about saving face or anything, but I guess just being respectable. Yeah, not being immature, not being stupid. Yes, and there was another episode about being stupid. And I admit, I'm stupid sometimes, but I'm not going to be stupid in front of them. And everyone has their stupid moments. You're stupid too. Just kidding. Yeah, but just don't be perpetually stupid or make stupid being part of your identity, because stupid is not a role model or a good example, obviously. I admit, one time I had a summer tutoring job. Well, the job ended up being in front of a classroom setting with a blackboard and all that. But I knew I was in a position of authority, and I was responsible for several impressionable kids, about a dozen of them. I forgot how old they were. I think like fifth and sixth grade. But I was a role model then. I wasn't like, oh, I'll take on the mantle of being a role model. These kids look up to me. No, it's just your role. It's just what you were put into. So I laid down the law. I tried to enforce discipline. I tried to be responsible and kept them on task. But I did keep things fun. I tried to find different activities for them here and there. I tried to find ways to relate to them. But I established with them, I am not your friend. I am your tutor. I'm your teacher. I am older than you, much older. I admit one time I didn't conduct myself very well. I mean, I didn't go on a tirade at them, but they just did something that was really ridiculous and funny. And I couldn't help but like crack up, and because the whole class is laughing, then that made me laugh. And I had to go outside and laugh, and the teacher from the neighboring classroom had to come by and like get them to calm down. And I'm sure she gave me a disapproving look, like, why the heck are you laughing? Shouldn't you be over this at this age? Yeah, I admit that was an example of not being a good example. Oh, another anecdote I remember was when I was a science camp counselor. Yeah, I volunteered to lead a cabin of like, I forgot how many, I think it was 8, maybe a dozen kids, and led them through their activities and lead them to the dining hall and made sure they were quiet at night when they were sleeping. But I admit those kids, they were not the best behaved, and I didn't lash out at them, but I lashed out in private. You know, I was pretty frustrated with their behavior. But other than that, I conducted myself as best as I could. I was a role model. I couldn't be one of the guys, you know, like one of the kids. Like, of course, I was physically bigger than them. I was taller, but they need direction. They need structure. Of course, as a kid and as a teenager, you need that, and hopefully you get that from your role models and examples. Yeah, but at the end of the day, please be a role model. That's what I try to be. That's what I strive to be. Because just your butt being there, being in the presence, or just people knowing about you, you're influencing someone. You are a role model. They look at what you do. They look at what you say. They look at your reputation. They look at how you act. But believe it or not, it's not just good for them. It's good for you. You're like, oh, okay. I respect myself. I hold myself to a high standard. I know better. I've learned this before. I've done this before. I can share my experiences. It's kind of a responsibility, if anything, when you are a role model, whether on purpose or inadvertently. And of course, the role of role model and examples is not just peers, it's not just friends, it's not just one of the guys, one of the girls. I am pretty sure there was no one the same age as me ever that I considered my role model. Well, they don't really have to be an authority figure or a higher power or whatnot, but the role models and examples are kind of a goal. It's not what you're striving to, it's what you're striving towards. Like, I'm living my own life journey, but there is this role model, and I'm trying to, I'll take what works for me, the good thing about him when it works for me, you know, and add it onto my journey. And of course, people, especially kids, they don't actively think, oh, he is my role model. No, it's kind of subconscious, you know, you kind of internalize it. Yeah, I'm not going to walk up to my friends' kids. It's like, hey, I'm going to be your role model today. It's very, very subtle, if anything. But it does take an amount of grace and an amount of respect. And unfortunately, there may be times when the people who see you as a role model, seeing you act not like a role model. I guess in a way, if situations like that happen, you own up to it. Not really justify it per se, and you don't want to be like a hypocrite. But it's like you say, I have my moments, I feel certain ways, but so do you. Yeah, I'm not perfect, I'm only a person, and so are you. That's if it comes that way. Ideally, I guess try to quote unquote hide your bad moments and your vices. Okay, well anyways, now that concludes the episode. Now I think I've said enough. Like I say, if there are ever addendums, I'll add on accordingly. But once again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.